What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from Xgrowth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shahin with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Christine Law, Director, Head of Account-Based Marketing for Asia Pac and Japan at ServiceNow. We're going to be talking about how to incorporate your brand experience into your ABM programs. ABM, in most cases, rightly or wrongly, tends to be an activation motion with strong CDAs. And sometimes because of that, you might lose the important elements of your brand in those activities. So I'm chatting with Christine today to see how you can basically avoid that. Christine, thanks a lot for joining us.
Hi, very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Super excited. And I'm very excited because of your background. Obviously, you're at ServiceNow now, but also because of your background, the work that you've done at Google, and I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with how much emphasis Google puts on brand experience and how important the experience is. Can you give us a quick overview of what brand experience means to you?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just, in addition to my Google experience, I also want to mention that I've been fortunate to work in some fairly big tech companies. And in my early career, it was with IBM, and then I moved to Red Hat as well. And I wanted to mention that because all these brands have a very strong identity of them, including IBM being this giant IT infrastructure and backbones for a lot of major corporates. Red has been known as a very open company on everything open for the products that they do. And Google obviously is a very innovative, synonymous with innovation. And then ServiceNow now, obviously, we are smaller when compared to other vendors, but at the same time, we have a very strong reputation of making the world works. Not that I'm trying to do the promotion here, but I feel all of this really resonate with me. I think in my mind, brand experience is really all about how our customer and prospect perceive our brand, really the lasting impression that they have whenever they think about our company. And obviously, some people think brand experience is really the job of brand and marketing. But in my mind, it's actually every employee's responsibility. And it, can be built on many fronts, right? As simple as when you talk to a Googler, you have certain expectation how that person's going to be like. You will expect that person to be in t-shirt and jeans and, sounds very cool. That's the impression that you get for a Googler. So I feel that, in order to have that projection of the brand, everything you do matters and every touch point matters. It could be digital, it could be physical, it could be as small as the person that you shake hands with. So I think we have to be very careful as an employee for that company to ensure that will come across. And I think what I found the most interesting, probably the Google experience, it really gave me a lot of insight about how you really have to enforce your brand with everything you do. We try to wrap around our campaigns with the Google culture, making sure everything we do really representing the innovation. And I'm not saying all the other companies that I work at wasn't like that, but just Google makes it so much more important that we have to focus on those elements. So yeah, so I think that's probably the key points that I wanted to mention in terms of the brand experience. But I think another element I also wanted to mention is while we are running our campaigns or while we are interacting with our customers, I think it's very important to put ourselves in their shoes. And as a B2B marketer in my whole career history, nowadays I feel like I need to be a B2C marketer. I have to think
Interesting.
about, yeah, I need to think about how they feel when they are interacting with my campaign. It's not like, ServiceNow's dealing with a major bank, but it's actually ServiceNow dealing with this particular individual who works at that bank. So if they come to our campaign or if they read our messaging, how would I like them to feel about our brand? And also, as simple as, as a consumer myself, when I'm reading an ad or when I'm getting an email, I don't want to be annoyed. I don't want to look at this ad and say, oh, this is not relevant to me. Why is it popping up on my feed? And it happens to us so often, right? And I don't want my campaigns to show up to be an annoyance to my customers. And in order to do that, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be thought through. And digital is one thing, even when it comes to our event, we even had to think about down to the level of, oh, how long does the registration process take when they come to a counter? Is that like a 3 seconds experience or is that like a 2 minutes experience? You
Wait in
know,
line and yeah.
yeah, and when they're sitting at the auditorium, can they hear it? Is the music too loud? I never thought as a B2B marketer that is something that I had to think about. But then the more and more when I work on these campaigns, when I think about it as a person myself, I don't want to have this cranking music going on, and then suddenly they play this video that I don't really understand. You have to think about all these things.
Mm.
So, and if you are coming to a Google event, you want this to be playful. If you're coming to an IBM event, you want it to be formal. So how do you project those elements when you're running your campaigns? Sorry to
Got
be
it. No, this is great. This
yeah.
is a great introduction to this conversation. Great point to start on. I guess that's the next question I want to ask you and dive deep is you obviously were doing ABM at Google as well, and now is a very strong focus at ServiceNow. How do you see this definition that we gave to brand experience being incorporated into ABM programs to tell a story?
Yeah, so I think probably I have to start with defining ABM a little bit because I think every company that I worked at, the definition of account-based marketing is a little different. Some would say one to few customers is account-based marketing. Some were down to the level one-to-one. At ServiceNow, we are really talking about one marketer looking after several accounts, but every interaction with those accounts is a one-to-one experience. And because of that, like you mentioned earlier, if you have a certain brand image, so for example, ServiceNow is making the world works. How do you make sure that you're making the world works for this company and this particular individual? And we have to ensure that we incorporate our brand element, but then it's still very, very relevant to that particular account and to that particular individual. So, from a marketing point of view, obviously you need to understand that account very well before you can tailor anything. We had a whole process that we get to the point that we understand the customer well enough and what we want to tell them. But if you look at the nitty gritty detail, for example, if you're putting up a web page that just for that customer, you have to think about the imagery that you use. Is that a banking customer? Is that banking customer in Australia? Or is that banking customer in India? And is this you're targeting the developers or you targeting the executive? And then you have to think about imagine yourself being an Indian developer working for a bank in a remote location. So then you have to find imagery that kind of fits that. And when I look at that web page, oh, that's me. So I feel like reading the rest, right? And then in terms of messaging, for example, it's not just about, hey, why is that our solution good for the bank? We actually have to read the annual report of that company to understand what are their priorities. So we have to tailor the messaging down to the individual account level. And then if you are presenting to one of the executive, you then have to start researching that particular person. What do they care about? And how do we make sure that our campaign reflects that, but ties it back to our brand? Because obviously this particular person may care a lot of other things, but we want to ensure that we can provide a solution for what he wants to achieve. That's probably the main thing in terms of how do we connect with them, with our brand, but also ensuring we know where they are, as in both at the digital front and the physical front. I have had experience at making assumptions, dealing with customers that with a Malaysian company, and then you started putting all these references about Malaysia, what the economy is like, and then you research it a bit more, and the customer never mentioned where he is. And only when I talked to the salesperson, the guy actually based in Dubai, and he has a much bigger charter than Malaysia. So then you're like, why didn't he put it on LinkedIn that he's based in Dubai? But then everything that you thought about and you wanted to tailor for him and down to which event to invite him to, he's not even in this region. What am I gonna do? What do I? So those things that we got to be so careful about. I know it's almost sound like we become a hospitality expert, but that's really how you are.
That's what it takes for those bespoke experiences, I think.
Yeah.
Christine, can you give us some examples of how you've implemented this in the past, whether it's, at Google or IBM or anywhere else? Do you think we can talk about some examples?
Yes. I think one of the most interesting example and that about experience, right? I don't want the impression is like, I don't think about business, but we're really talking about experience here. When IBM first launched Watson, which is a cognitive AI pioneer solution at the time. And we were running a launch event in the Southeast Asia region. And at the time, we were like, okay, you can talk about Watson, you can talk about all the benefits of AI. And this is many, many years ago now. You can talk about a use case. But at the time, it was quite intangible to understand how you use AI in your work and how does that relate to me as a person. Obviously, as a marketing person, we have to think about something gimmicky to attract the customer. We will have an event that talks about the value proposition. We'll have an event that talks about all the content. But we wanted to give an experience is that come and experience Watson. The global marketing team has developed like a Chef Watson application. So basically, you can punch in any ingredients. For example, we made the soy sauce cocktail, and we made some funny ingredients. For example, you may have an Indian ingredients that putting into a French dish. We talk about fusion food, but some of these ingredients are very unexpected. You may put, I don't know, soy sauce cocktail is the most memorable for me. And
I mean, that does sound quite crazy, a soy sauce cocktail.
So the application itself was quite simple, actually. You were just putting a few ingredients in, and then Watson will mix and match the chemicals to kind of suggest what's an ideal taste. And then it spits out the recipe, and then you can make the recipe. What we did ended up, we were partnering with a very well-known hotel in Singapore. And the marketing team, and this was the most fun experience I had, the marketing team sat together with the head chef who runs meals on a daily basis for 1,000 people. So we sat together with the head chef and we're like, okay, these are the dishes that Watson spits out from the app. Do you think you can make them? So we gave him the app to play with. He tried a few dishes and he was like, okay, some are great, some are not tasty. I would recommend that we can take these. So we ended up running a gala dinner, 100% on Watson recipes. And then we explained to the customer how they came about, and we got the head chef to come and talk about his whole experience working with AI. So we thought we make it very tangible to the customers and they could actually taste it. And that was best part of it. And then we had some other things at the gala dinner, but that was a highlight and very memorable for me. I also want to mention another one is we were launching a innovation center at Red Hat at the time. But innovation is so intangible because it's not about, sometimes it's all about a group of people sitting in an empty room to brainstorm ideas. That's innovation. That's how it comes about for the design thinking process.
Innovation, quote unquote innovation.
Yeah, so it's not like the Minority Report, you go in, you're trying to, do something, right? Essentially, the Innovation Center was an empty room with lots of whiteboards. And the marketing team walked into the room was like, okay, how am I going to launch this? Because there is nothing to launch. So we were like, okay, let's think about and let our customer visualize that process. So we started bringing in like an artist drawing about the process of innovation so you can kind of visualize it. Obviously, you can have somebody that do a video. There's many other ways that you can do it to explain the process. But we make it very colorful and, almost like cartoons that everybody can relate. All of us at some point would have read some sort of cartoons. But I think the main thing it's about letting them to visualize the process, and then every step we will bring it into a technical conversation. We may have people doing demo, but we have some sort of animation guidance through the way. And so when the customer walk into the room, they just look at, well, it's a room of cartoons, which was quite interesting because we have had some really senior executive from big enterprises. They were like, huh? So which I thought it was quite an interesting way of doing the campaigns and explaining a very very difficult concept in a very layman, relatable way. And we've gotten pretty good feedback about those.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
plenty of examples, but I thought just wanted to highlight.
I think those examples are great because it people are like, oh, we do this particular thing. How do we incorporate that into our marketing? And we're so niche and we're doing this for this particular thing for the banking sector, but really pushing that frontier and pushing the boundaries in terms of how can we really incorporate our brand and our product and our services into our marketing components. It's hard, but when it works, it's just amazing. So I love those experiences. Where do you think marketers go wrong when it comes to their ABM programs, incorporating their brand experiences into those?
I think there are three things that I see all the time, and even myself sometimes just guilty for those mistakes. Number one is really being relevant. There's so many events and campaigns that I see. They are very product centric. They are all about what we want to sell you and not about how our solution can help their business. We talk a lot, I'm sure you have heard a lot of marketers talked about always have to emphasize business outcomes. But even the business outcomes isn't really relevant to that particular individual or particular company. Because you hear a lot about digital transformation, you have to be agile, this is great, cost cutting, all of that. But when it applies to one particular customer, what does that mean to them? Because not every company has the same journey of digital transformation. If you talk to a traditional company, for them it's all about revamping, being more innovative. But if you talk about a very new unicorn kind of customer, for them it's not just about innovation. Maybe cost cutting is not really a concern for them, right? And when you talk about digital transformation, they don't need to transform. They were born in digital era. So what's that messaging to them? So we have to be very careful of being relevant. Like this week, all I'm seeing is generative AI is all over the news.
ChatGPT just
everything
left and right.
But okay, is that relevant to every company for generative AI? So we have to think about when you talk about generative AI, why is that relevant to the customer that you want to sell to, right? I think that's very important. And it comes to the second point I want to make is this shiny object syndrome. anything new is great. I think for marketer, because we do product launches, we do solution launch, we cover trends, but sometimes I look at it, not every customer wants it. Some
Yeah.
companies
Yeah.
just don't want this shiny object. And very simple, put yourself in their shoes. Do I really need a new iPhone every year? You
Exactly.
have to you have
So
to ask yourself, right?
we love new shiny things.
Yeah, but
It's
you
just
know,
amazing. But
maybe
you're
you
right. Does
buy
it
one
have
less
business
phone.
impact?
Yeah, you buy one less phone, then you can buy something else. So it's really a trade-off that you have to think about. Hey, maybe the customer doesn't need generative AI right now, but you can sell them something else, which is more relevant to them and is more pressing for them, right? And then lastly, I think we all suffer a little is less is more. We are doing so many campaigns, all of us, everywhere, because we're all desperate to get more business. Economy is not great, right? Everybody wants to get more business. So the solution for that is do more, show up more in the market, knock on your customer door more. But there's a limit. It's not just about annoyance. It's when one person can only do 3 campaigns in a quarter, now you're asking them to do 6. Your quality is going to suffer. You will not be able to get down to the level of really understanding your customer. So you're churning out campaigns that are very generic, very fast. Maybe it's a bit better to take some time to figure out what your customer wants before you churn out something, and your yield will go down. So is that really a good thing to do more? Maybe just do less that is more relevant, and then you hit a bit better.
Yeah, that's such a great message, and I think that is very prevalent right now in the market of let's just do more and more and more, and that's such a great point. Such a great point. Now, Christine, I have a couple of rapid fire questions I want to ask you, but before we go there, is there anything else that maybe I didn't touch on that you think it's important for us to, or I didn't ask that you think it's important for us to cover about again ABM brand experience?
I think, we talked a lot about spending the time to understand your customers, have some thinking about the experience. There's just one caveat I want to say is there's always a balance of, and I think we talked a little earlier, it's about 100%, 120%, or 80%. Sometimes I have seen the extreme of people spending so much time in the experience and not forgetting what is actually important for your campaign. I think at the end of the day, we come here to do business, right? We come here to set up a strategy. So we always have to have a fine balance between, okay, get back to the basic, what is your fundamental strategy, right? And then you think about the elements that will help your brand to amplify in your strategy. It cannot just be, oh, I want the customer to know everything about the brand, because at Google, for example, you can make it so fun, you can make it so grand, but at the end of the day, it's about fulfilling a strategy and making the right balance of how much money you're spending, looking at the ROI. Does that make sense to spend a fortune to get a little bit of profit? So, I think we all have to have that balance of ensuring that you have the right experience, but not going to the extreme of being too extravagant, which I think is probably a bit harder these days. The budget is tight, I think, for most companies. But I've seen in the past that there are campaigns that like have a roller coaster in it, and you're like, what does that do? So
Don't put roller coasters in your campaigns.
I
Love
have
it.
seen it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do some rapid fire questions. Those are great points, and thanks for adding them in. So the first rapid fire question I have is, what is one resource? This could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a talk, whatever it is that has had a profound impact on the way that you work or live. What comes to mind?
if I tell you, I'm going to show my age somehow, but I wanted to say my very first meaningful job was actually from IBM. So if you ask me, I still think my blood is blue somehow. So the book that really influenced me was the book from Lou Gerstner, the IBM CEO from 1993 to early 2000. And his book is Who Says Elephants Can't Dance? And I don't know how many people know about this book. It was a must read as an IBMer at the time. But I think after I read the book, the first impression I have is if an elephant can dance, I can too. That's really shaped the belief I have that nothing is too difficult to do. But, just very quick summary. The reason why it was so amazing is because IBM was in the kind of a brink of bankruptcy, or they were dividing the companies into pieces rather than the one IBM. And I think that it was going through a lot of visions change. And I think when Lou came into IBM, he just declared the last thing that IBM needs right now is a vision. So he then set up a lot of strategy to focus on execution, simplify the organization, making sure performance is very important to the employees. Well, at the time, there's so many people that worked there for years. Performance no longer an issue for the employment. And after he changed the company around, I think one of the things that related to marketers is he really consolidate a lot of branding and marketing agencies. IBM was showing up as all different brand images. We talked about brand experience. If you talk to people about IBM at the time, it's all different colors, all different representation what IBM means. I think since his days, IBM was kind of synonymous to e-commerce, e-business. And then the blue bars of the IBM logo become so prominent and recognizable. Has always been the case, but I think he reinforced it to
You
ensure
really.
that.
This is the first time. This is the first time I've heard this book, and I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on it and reading it. So thanks so much for pointing it out.
I gotta say, it may not be relevant to today's landscape, but at the time was very impactful to me. And I think probably the most impressive was the company was maybe around 30 billions at the time. And when he quit, it went up to 100 and something billion.
Wow.
And he completely turned it around. So, yeah.
Love it. Love it. That's such a great advice. Thank you so much for mentioning that. All right. Second question. If you could give one advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
Think customer. What's in it for them as a person, right? Not what's in it for them, for the company. And it's not about what we want to sell to the company. It's about, okay, if this particular person buys our solution, what's in it for them? Is that better for their job? Is it helping them to get their next promotion? We need to understand.
Customer. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so short and succinct and to the point. I love it. Question number 3. Who are some of the influencers that you basically not follow, but you come across, or that you like their material, you like what they're saying? And I know influencers come with a baggage, that word, but some of the people that are either in sales and marketing or in leadership that you kind of really like hearing what they have to say. Does anyone come to mind?
I have to say, as a standard answer, as a tech marketers, I had to follow all the tech CEOs and tech executives. Obviously, our ServiceNow CEO right now, Bill, I follow him, or the Google executive, Bill Gates, Satya from Microsoft, maybe Seth Godin from a marketing point of view. But I think the people actually influence me the most are the senior people that I used to work with in different organizations in the local markets. Because I'm connected to them on LinkedIn, I kind of look at what they're doing, what they're putting up on their post. The difference between the thought leaders and these local leaders is they actually tells me what's hot in the market. What are they hearing from their customers? Why is it important that we have to focus on these things? Because if you just look at the global level thought leaders, all you know about now is generative AI.
That's it.
Yeah, but if you get down the level of the local market leaders, you will know that, hey, how does it apply to this company? How does this apply to this person? And then they also have interaction with the actual customers. Sometimes the customer comments. And it's pretty interesting to see that dynamics on, what are some of the most important things for a particular country. So yeah, so that's what I usually read, I have to say. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, last question, Christine. What is something that excites you about B2B today?
Sorry to be cliche, but it's actually the future of digital. It's very scary personally, I think, but it's also very exciting at the same time. We now have the ability to kind of stop every person from a technology point of view. Obviously, every company has a different practice, and privacy is definitely the top priority and concerns for marketers. But the fact that you're able to identify their interests, even at the aggregated level, and then you can serve them very personalized content, is very exciting. Even as a consumer myself, we were just joking about it the other day with the digital marketing head, and she said, I don't want to see handbags that I don't like on my ads feed. Which is true. I'm happy to read content if I'm interested in it, right?
Yeah.
And this is why you hear a lot of people mindless scrolling. You will only scroll if you're interested. And I get to the level of what you see is actually what you're interested in. Obviously, as a marketer, we have to be responsible of what we do. But at the same time, it's very exciting that, hey, if you find the right angle to reach your customer, your job is half done.
Love it. Love it. Christine, this has been an awesome conversation. And I have a bunch of notes that I'm going to go back to and review. And I am pretty sure that a lot of the listeners are going to find it as awesome and insightful as I had. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Pleasure's all mine.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make the show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shahin Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just keen for a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week, right here on Growth Colony.